Mom, when are we gonna get there? How many more miles?
Ever since you started traveling, it's been like this. You're left hanging with no idea what's going on. That's why United Airlines provides up-to-the-minute information at the gate.
Can I go to the bathroom?
Especially when there's a delay. It's just one more way United is rising.
The next frontier is sort of the ultimate dream of computer science.
It's scary, costs a lot of money.
Sound, music, all done with the Gizmos 98.
This is Chicago Tonight, Thursday, April 23rd, 1998.
Good evening, I'm John Callaway, and welcome to Chicago Tonight. Remember back when the internet was the preserve of just a few techies? Well, by 1994, 3 million of us were connected, and today that figure has exploded to 62 million Americans. The Commerce Department says 10 million of us in the U.S. and Canada made purchases on the World Wide Web by the end of last year. The internet has grown faster than all of the technologies that preceded it, including radio and television. And, pardon the grammar, you ain't seen nothing yet. Visitors to this week's big computer dealers expo, known as COMDEX at McCormick Place, were given a peek at some of the glitzier future applications of computers. And tonight on this program, we'll share some of what they saw, and we'll hear from computer experts about how we'll all be affected by future cyber developments. Our COMDEX guide is Chicago Tonight correspondent Rich Samuels.
Yeah, right here we've got the 400 megahertz Pentium 2 processor from Intel.
For some here at COMDEX, the big news was the 400 megahertz clock speed of the next generation of microprocessors.
But in the minds of many, the most memorable and perhaps the most entertaining moment of this gathering came shortly after 9 o'clock on Monday morning.
That was when Microsoft's Bill Gates took to the stage of the Erie Crown Theater to give a sneak preview of Microsoft's new operating system, Windows 98.
So let's go ahead and plug this in.
And project manager Chris Caposola tried to demonstrate how easy it is to hook up external devices to a Windows 98 machine. Back to this shortly.
We've got vignettes that talk about how technology can be used in retail.
But first, project manager Stacy Breifogel leads us through Microsoft's Technology Futures Showcase. These vignettes represent Microsoft's view of the future of personal computing, how we will use these devices in commerce, in the home, wherever we go.
What we're talking about here is a couple of friends meeting each other in a store, and they want to plan getting together. And so they both have little palm-sized PCs.
Of course, Microsoft does not hold a monopoly on the future, not yet.
You're right, but you messed up with your positive and negative.
These high school students also have a vision, even though because of their tender years, they've not yet become targets of the antitrust division of the Justice Department. Students of the Illinois Math and Science Academy tell us what they see in the monitors of the future.
I think that our TV and our heating systems, air conditioning, our computing systems, they will all be intertwined with each other, each being dependent upon the other.
I imagine that when computers become, more powerful and smaller, that they'll be more portable. I mean, people will be able to take them around with them.
I have one right here, the Palm Pilot. I can, well, I'm a high school student. I can store my assignments. I can keep phone numbers. I can link up with, every morning I can download my email into that from my computer and read it on the go.
Every student will have their own personal computer device we call a slate.
Personal computer technology is clearly something the classroom of the future will not be without. But a lot of this forward-looking technology may be less than essential.
Sound, music, all done with the Gizmos 98.
I mean, gizmos are nice, but what I see happening is a lot of work on artificial intelligence, a lot of networking, trying to, the personal computer per se, I'm not sure is going to be as important as being able to interconnect with the internet from your home.
Back to Microsoft's view of the future.
In this vehicle here, we have the Auto PC, which is our WinCE operating system, or Windows CE operating system, incorporated in an automobile. It is functioning now with a mobile GPS system. In this vignette, we're pretending that the people in the car over there have actually found where they wanted to go, found a nice hotel. And in this hotel, they decided to sit down and watch a little TV. And we're showing interactive TV.
So this is what we can expect any day now. But will greater processing power and greater connectivity bring us closer together, make us more fulfilled?
It's a lot easier to keep in touch with people by writing an email than by sitting down and writing a letter with a pencil and paper. It's a lot faster. It gets there faster. Typing, for me, is faster than writing out a letter and mailing it.
Is it the same thing?
Well, I'm not as excited when I get an email as when I get an actual paper letter in my mailbox.
I email my friends from home all the time, and, you know, that's great. It's great that I can keep in touch with them. And in one sense, you know, that's better than nothing at all. But in another sense, being with another person, actually interacting with that person, I think will never be replaced by whatever technology might be developed.
I think it's going to be up to the people using the technology to, you know, keep a good balance between computers and actually communicating with people in the real world.
And back in the real world, Windows 98 offers a cautionary tale.
And it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner build, whoa.
That error message on the screen indicates a crash. So what else is new?
Moving right along.
That must be why we're not shipping Windows 98 yet.
Absolutely.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Rich Samuels.
And now joining us to discuss the world of computers are Christian Hammond, who is Associate Professor of Computer Science at the University of Chicago, where he built an artificial intelligence laboratory. Paul Cooper, President of Perceptual Robotics since its founding in 1995, and prior to that he was Professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at Northwestern University, where he directed his own research lab. Ellis Booker, who's Editor-at-Large at Internet Week, where he is the lead Microsoft reporter, and he's been covering computers and other high-technology business issues since 1983. And Catherine Haley, who's partner in the Chicago office of the Deloitte & Touche Consulting Group, where she's head of the information technology practice. And welcome all to Chicago Tonight. For those of you who were at COMDEX, does this little glitch that we saw at Mr. Gates' presentation represent a real problem of Windows 98, or does it symbolize a problem with Microsoft's issue with the Justice Department?
It was an unfortunate issue in the demo, as they say, at Microsoft. In fact, the people in the audience laughed when they saw that crash because every single one of them has experienced a similar outage.
Is it true he had a problem with the microphone to start off with?
Yes, there were a couple of other
there's a humbler for openers.
Glitches. In fact, consumers, and certainly the people in that room on Monday, are fairly sophisticated, that these are very complicated devices, and they occasionally do go south on you.
But what is the news with Windows 98? What, for those of us who want to make practical advances, before we get into the whole business of the far future, we just want to make some practical advances, what will it offer?
Windows 98, which is going to be on the shelves June 25, is an incremental but important upgrade to Windows 95. And the briefing that I got on it on Monday indicates that it is a better operating system. It protects you, apart from that demo problem they had. It does protect you from faults and errors and screwing up your machine much better than 95 did.
Does it do anything in terms of getting you on the internet faster?
It has probably the most significant change in Windows 98 is that the browser, the internet web browser component, is basically part and parcel of the operating system. So you view your local files, your local system, with exactly the same tool as you would view the web.
And that goes directly to the antitrust issue, does it not?
That's a complicated question, but the complaint that the Justice Department has with Microsoft actually involves not Windows 98, but Windows 95 and the bundling of that product with
But bundling is the issue.
But because they didn't know quite exactly what Windows 98 would look like, the Justice Department is going to be as much, if not more, annoyed with the nature of Windows 98, because essentially what it is that now we have one piece of technology that's so intermeshed with another piece of technology that you can't buy one without wanting the other, which means the operating system is going to push you in the direction of getting that browser, and Netscape is going to take hit after hit after hit in terms of people
Netscape
walking
being
away.
a competitor.
The major competitor for Microsoft in the browser world.
So is this just in your face from Microsoft saying to the Justice Department, come and get us? We're going to, forget about 95, we got 98.
Absolutely, and I think the Justice Department is going to do absolutely that. I think they're going to go in and Microsoft, as a huge organization, its days are numbered.
Paul.
I think you could be a little bit more charitable than they're being in the face of the Justice Department. I think Microsoft Windows started essentially with the idea of the desktop, and they, to their credit, recognized that there's now more to computing than the desktop, and so they're trying to figure out how they, in their particular market position, can reach the rest of it.
It's
and
what
the
they
rest
do
of it
now,
is,
right?
The rest of it is the net. So they have to reach the net somehow, and it's probably the right idea for them to try to do this. There's secondary so that's what they want to do, and so they're inviting themselves. They're sort of in a bind now because they're heading for controversy.
It's such a
the question
idea,
is,
in fact, that Netscape was going at the same idea and still is.
Well, in fact, it was Netscape's idea in some sense.
Initially.
Well, and the browser is just such a small component, really. It's just the access. It's the door that gets you out to the net. The power is there.
It's a critically important thing, isn't it?
It gets you there.
Well,
but the power is what's beyond.
But quite truthfully, when it comes down to it, most people, the thing they see is the interface, and that's what the browser, for most people, that's what the browser is. It's the interface to all the information. And you build a better browser, you're gonna hold on to the business, and a better browser is one that looks not only at the web, but looks at your own machine. And they're doing the right thing. It's the right thing to do, but at some point you have to say, well, we have to divide this up into little packages.
I was going to say, but is there a way of doing that? In other words, for those of us who are hoping, many of us just hope, whether it's Microsoft, just because they may have 90% of the business, we're hoping that they do better and better and better, but we're also hoping naively that competition is wonderful and that maybe somebody else will come in and knock them off someday.
And that's really the issue. If Microsoft controls the entire package, then they actually never have to let anyone else see how their pieces talk to each other, which means that other companies really can't get into the business. And it sort of puts a block to competition up that it's hard to, almost impossible to get over.
One of the remedies that people have chatted about for years, by the way, is that Microsoft should decouple its operating system business from its applications business so that they would not have a special knowledge of the operating system. And that would presumably give competitors a way in that Microsoft now has a lock on. I don't think that the Justice Department is going to go after Microsoft as a general purpose antitrust action. The current state of affairs is just they won't.
Somebody said the other day on a television program that the law is so much slower than technology that by the time they get through all of the appeals on however this thing comes out, that at best it'll be a kind of interesting history lesson. The technology will be way beyond this.
I mean, Netscape might be dead by the time the Justice Department is able to put the either break Microsoft up or open Microsoft's doors. And it could very well be that Netscape will be gone as a company before that.
But is this, aside from anything that we'll talk about in terms of technological development tonight, is this, if we're just using this as a kind of a state of the union, state of the world of computers, this COMDEX meeting that we're having and this conversation we're having, is this the most important issue in this world right now, that Justice Department suit?
I don't think, go ahead.
It's significant. I mean, I feel it kind of sharply because I'm the president of a software company, and Microsoft is a customer of ours and a partner of ours and potentially could destroy us without even really thinking about it in exactly the kind of way that they are doing business. So Microsoft has a lot of excitement. They do a lot of innovation. They add a lot of value. They also have a lot of power because they're the ones that inherited a standard. They basically ride a standard, which means they ride the economics of being the one that has the standard. And that means that unless they're careful, they can almost accidentally do bad things for the industry as a whole.
Do you feel like a mouse on the back of an elephant?
It's not so much that. I think
that's my best computer pun, by the way, of the year, mouse. But
yeah. I think Microsoft, some pushback is probably good. It looks like, they were maybe getting a little big for their britches, and I read an interesting thing about IBM. IBM did very much similar business strategies in the 60s, and they got a lot of pushback, and it probably helped in the end. So,
okay. I want to move beyond that. What I want to hear from each of you on what is the most exciting thing you either saw at COMDEX or that we should be excited about as people who want to be on the internet and using our computers more efficiently and creatively.
Well, in fact, one of the exciting technologies that they were showing was the technology that caused the demo to bust, and that's the universal serial bus, the universal standard interface that the Microsoft employee was trying to plug that scanner into.
And what's important about that?
What's important about that is that today your computer has ports in the back. One's for a mouse, one's for printer, one's for some other gizmo.
Looks like a jungle back there.
Yeah, jungle back there. This universal serial bus, this USB, is one kind of port. You just plug it in, the system recognizes what's been plugged in, and boom, it works.
So all kinds of applications can come from one plug instead of all these various things. What are you most excited about, Catherine?
See, I don't get as excited about the technologies itself as what it really enables. The things that we can do today, now, with the computer are so different from even 2 years ago. There used to be a lot of sizzle, not much steak, but now you can buy your car on the internet, you can pay all your bills on the internet, you can access information anywhere in the world on the internet.
And are you doing that personally now?
Yes.
And do you
I found my au pair on the internet.
Do you found your au pair?
Yes.
Very good. Do you feel when you do your banking and when you make credit card, you use your credit cards on the internet?
Yes.
Do you feel secure?
Well, there are two pieces of that. One, I feel absolutely secure with my credit card because, you know, if you leave your carbon behind, you have just as much of a security risk as you do on the internet. But the bigger issue is if I communicate with you on the internet, I don't necessarily know that you're getting the message, and you don't know that it's really coming from me as opposed to somebody who's pretending to be me. So there are some issues about transacting real business, high-value transactions on the internet. So about a year ago, Deloitte and the Thurston Group started a company actually that helps authenticate, and they will serve as a third party to guarantee individual transactions and the identity of the traders. So things like that are starting to evolve that are going to make the internet very real and very practical from a business perspective.
Paul Cooper, what excites you the most?
You know, the big trade shows like COMDEX, the big guys, Windows and Microsoft and Intel, they tend to dominate the sort of the headlines because that's what everybody has on their desk. The actual action is kind of not happening on the desk anymore, I don't think. You saw it a little bit in the early piece. The computers are getting smaller and they're moving out into the car. They're moving into wallets. Actually, I saw a smart card which has a computer in it. And so, you know, they're getting more widespread.
A smart card is?
Well, they use them a lot in Europe. It's a thing that carries around lots of things about you, including how much money it contains in the card, as it were. But in effect, it's a little computer. And we don't even know all the things that it can do. But certainly it's a long ways away from
Are you saying
Windows
it's a substitute
98.
for a wallet and a substitute for a phone directory? I mean, does it?
No, it's not. It's not like a general information utility, a smart card. It's more like an advanced credit card that has the bank inside it, or at least has enough of the bank that it knows how to deal with your personal finances. So.
And what are you most excited about?
I mean, there are two things. One, machines are getting smaller and smaller, and they're going to disappear. They're going to show up in everything we own, everything we use, everything we touch. And two, they're all going to be talking to each other, which means that as you move through the world, everything you touch, everything you deal with, everything you do can be absorbed and used for you. That is, we can actually build little agents, tiny little programs that float around the world and take care of us, make suggestions for us, make recommendations for us. Make suggestions for us when we're typing a piece of text. We can get references automatically. When we're browsing the web, we can get suggestions all the time.
Automatically get references?
Automatically.
In other words, if I'm really interested in the White House position on cigarette legislation, that thing is somehow going to trigger all kinds of other research that's going to come up?
Just looking at it means we can look at it, means a program can look at it, go off and find other pieces of information related to it.
Kind of an electronic information valet?
Absolutely.
Mr. Callaway, would you like to see some of this?
And it's a valet that'll not only take care of information, but it'll take care of buying things for you because it'll know what you want.
You need socks now.
It'll know
it's
when you're
time
out of
for you
sugar.
to buy underwear.
Yes.
You need sugar.
Absolutely.
That's how far.
Yes, but we have a long way to go. For instance,
we have a shorter way to go than you can imagine.
Well, wait a minute. Bill Gates talked about, at the beginning of his speech, he talked about that the lights come on and off through windows at his palace out there.
Forget about windows for that.
No.
I mean, your car doesn't need windows. Your house doesn't need windows. I mean, it doesn't need that. What we want is actually a world in which most of the computers that we interact with, we don't ever see. We don't ever touch. That they're not computers in the sense of things that we type on. They have computation and communication, but
your colleague was about to,
Yes.
come in with some cold water, but before he does, what's your prediction? Is this in 10 years, 15? What?
I'll tell you. I'll give you a browser. I'll give you a browser that makes suggestions, a word processor that makes suggestions, a device that watches you shop and helps you shop in a year. I'll give you the first two in 6 months.
What do you think?
Well, I just want them to first come up with a better email client that will filter the 300 pieces of mail that I get every day. I mean, these are more prosaic issues.
What about pop-up ads? Can we do anything about that?
Computers that come on faster, and in fact there are some good innovations around that. The other point to make, though, is these non-PC devices, the billions of them, every light switch, for instance, people have talked about this. This is a place where nobody yet owns the ground. And in fact, the coming battle is going to be between Microsoft with a product they call Windows CE and the Java camp. Java is a competitor. Both are trying to get into all these devices.
You wanted to speak?
There's a couple of different things to say. I mean, Windows started on the desktop, and a big question for Microsoft is whether Windows can actually reach into a smart card. I mean, I actually saw it at COMDEX, a smart card with Java on it. I mean, you know, that's their mission. Whether it sort of makes sense is an open question, and I kind of wish them luck. And Chris suggested we don't need Windows in the car. I mean, there's a whole new world.
The other issue I want you, Chris, to speak to that I think you're concerned about, and that is access to all of this wonderful world by, say, kids in schools. I mean, are we going to have a kind of two-tier rich and poor country on information?
Well, we could very well build it, and we kind of right now we're kind of marching towards it.
I disagree.
I mean,
oh, great.
No. We have a right now, I can point to public and private schools in the University of in the Chicago area that have infinitely better internet connections than most of the inner city schools.
I think at this point in time, you're absolutely correct. And there is a difference, but the cost is coming down. It's getting cheaper. When you go back in history, not very many.
I don't think it's a matter of cost. I think it's a matter of will. And I mean, this is a thing where.
Well, no, wait a minute. I thought that this, for example, that this public school system was really trying to get on to things and help kids.
I think this is going to be the great.
On the other hand, Mayor Daley's talked about let's start to read and write before we get too wrapped up in technology.
I mean, Ellis talked about the sort of coming battleground as we go away from the desktop. And before we reach the place where we're all wearing pieces of computer all over our body, there's some intermediate places that work well, like the so-called set-top box. Or they have web phones now. They're coming out in Europe and coming into the U.S.
What's a web phone?
It's basically like a browser in your phone. So it's like a miniature computer that's not a big full-fledged desktop thing, and it was never had that conception behind it, but is a very low cost-effective price point for, you know, families that can't buy a $3,000 PC.
So you're saying that all that technology will drive towards a democratization of this?
Absolutely. The access is just
in fact, one of the things that Gates mentioned in his keynote on Monday is the one technology that's lagging and that is problematic is the speed of the network.
You mentioned that at home, the phone lines are going to be looked at as kind of archaic.
Well, I mean, the people who are really most excited about these technologies sit in offices or occasionally at home with very high-speed lines. And so the internet to them looks wonderful and attractive and multimedia. Those of us who are dialing in with pokey 28.8 or even 56K modems, it doesn't look that great yet.
But let's just step back for the last couple of minutes of this program. Will it make us better people? Will any of this help us be more peaceful, more loving, more nurturing, more human, or will it just make us, will it atomize us and we'll be sitting there at home alone?
I think it will make us more human because it takes barriers away. It allows you to operate on a global, seamless basis fairly easily. And I think it'll keep us more connected, provided we don't give up the face-to-face connections that one of the students mentioned
earlier. It's such a struggle for so many families today to have quality time under the circumstances of our rushed and rearranged lives. Is there anything we've been talking about tonight that helps that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the essence of what's happening with computers is actually connectivity and communication. I'll give you a personal example. I barely talked to my father in the past 5 years, and he got an email connection, and we've been having conversations. Right. I mean,
does it work somehow better for you on email with him than, say, the telephone?
Absolutely, because there's a little more control. There's a little less spontaneity, and there's a little more thoughtfulness. And so we have our hot spots in each other's personality, and we can make sure we avoid them. And when they pop up, we can do something about it in terms of a slow and thoughtful communication.
I'm very interested in other comments, but we'll get them over the credits because I see our time is up. Our many thanks to Catherine Haley, Ellis Booker, Kristen Hammond, and Paul Cooper for being with us this evening. I'm John Callaway. Thank you and good night. You wanted to comment?
Yeah, I mean, one way to answer your question, I think that's actually quite important that we didn't get to, is all these technologies are actually generating an incredible amount of wealth. I mean, they're actually making people money. They're making people's lives work easier and faster. I mean, people can buy things and do their day-to-day jobs easier in the office or at home. Plus, some of these technologies really are very high-touch technologies. And you can send pictures over the internet now. I mean, I was just having an argument with my wife about whether we should get a film camera or a digital camera. And she said,
but you'll be able to see your grandkids or loved ones across.
It'll take decades, though, to figure out the sociological effects of this stuff.
I'm sorry?
It's going to take decades, or if not half a century, to see what the real sociological.
I mean, we're into anthropology.
But it is going to change everything.
But for the better, for the worse, we can't tell at this point.
It's a matter
but it
of
will
will.
change things.
It's a matter of will.
Yeah.
I'm going to really believe that.
This evening's presentation of Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by United Airlines.
Mom, when are we gonna get there? How many more miles?
Ever since you started traveling, it's been like this. You're left hanging with no idea.